My name is John Mollica, partner of my Franchise CPAs. In this video, we're going to be going step by step and line by line into what is required to fill out the PPP or Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness application. So this video is appropriate for anybody who has gotten the PPP loan funding and is in the process of gathering your documents and applying or getting ready to apply for forgiveness. This video is brought to you by my Franchise CPAs and First Financial. So we're going to go step by step here, starting at the very top. The first thing that the application asks for is your business name. Now, this is the legal name of your business, usually is followed by Inc. or LLC. So, for example, your business name might be ABC LLC. That would be an example of your legal business name. Now, they also want to know if you have one, your DBA or doing business as name. This is not a required thing, but most states allow you to obtain a separate name that you're just using that your customers would identify you by. It's called a DBA. So if you have one, you would place your DBA here. Then they ask for your business address. So this is the legal physical address that should correspond with your legal business entity. So when you originally set up your LLC, whatever address would show up on your articles of organization, if you're an LLC, or your articles of incorporation, if you're a corporation, you would put that address here. This is going to be your physical address of business. Over here, you're going to put your business TIN or tax identification number. You might have an EIN, which is an employer identification number, and you typically would have this if you're, let's say, an LLC or an Inc., an incorporation. Or if you're just a sole prop, then your social security number, or SSN, would be your tax identification number. So this would be appropriate if you're a sole prop or sole proprietor. They want you to provide your business phone, so whatever number you typically your cell phone, or if you have a separate phone number for your business. Primary contact, so who is the individual? So this is the who is the individual that they are corresponding with. So this would be your name. It should correspond with the name you provided when you originally applied for the PPP loan. And finally, your email address, whatever email you typically use and keep on top of. So that's some basic information that they're looking for. Now let's go into the meat of the application. Starting with the SBA PPP loan number. Now, the SBA PPP loan number, the lender PPP loan number, the PPP loan amount, the PPP loan disbursement date, employees at time of loan application, and employees at time of forgiveness application. Well, actually, except for this one, this is separate. But these first four are all coming from the same place. Where would you get these? All of these are going to come from the original PPP loan application. So all of these amounts are from the original loan application. So when you originally applied for the PPP loan, you would have provided some of these numbers, and the lender, the bank you worked with, would have provided you some. So if you look at your original PPP loan app, you should be able to find the SBA loan number, the lender loan number, the PPP loan amount, or how much did you receive, the PPP loan disbursement date, which date did the money enter your bank, and how many employees did you say that you had when you originally applied. This number here, employees at the time of forgiveness application, when you submit for forgiveness, how many employees do you currently have? Did you have 5 when you originally applied, and now you have 3? Well, that's important, and they will take that into consideration. We'll see later on in the application how they look at what the amount of forgiveness ultimately will be, depending on how many employees you had when you applied, because that also determines how much of a loan you got, and then how many employees did you have when you're now applying for forgiveness. Let's scroll down here a little bit. Next, they want to know your EIDL advance amount. The EIDL is the Emergency Disaster Loan that you may or may not have applied for. So this is a loan that popped up directly through the SBA before the PPP loan became available. If you did happen to apply for the EIDL, there was an advance or a grant amount. So this advance was a grant amount that was given to you pretty soon after you applied, if you did. And then that was followed up by a loan amount. So if you happen to get the advance, and it was originally $10,000 per EIDL, and they reduced it to $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. If you happen to receive the EIDL advance, you would put that amount here. So let's say you received $4,000. You would put the EIDL advance amount that you received here. And then the EIDL application number was provided in an email after applying for the EIDL. So you would find that email from the SBA and place it on the line to the right here. Next, they want to know the payroll schedule. So the frequency with which payroll is paid to employees. Do you pay on a weekly basis, bi-weekly, twice a month, monthly, or another amount, or another frequency? So whichever frequency you happen to pay your employees by, you would check that appropriate box. So let's say you happen to pay employees biweekly. The covered period. The covered period begins on the date that you received your PPP funds and ends 56 days later. So if you happen to receive your PPP funds, let's say on 6/1, "56 days later" is when you would, and that 56 days later would be the end of this covered period. So that date plus 56 days. Now, in instances where your pay frequency of your payroll schedule is bi-weekly or more frequent, you can use an alternative payroll covered period. It would still consist of 56 days in total, but the beginning here, the amount you would put here, is going to be the first day of the first payroll period following the disbursement date of your PPP funds. So if you receive your funds on 6/1, but the first day of your first pay period after that date happens to be 6/5, then you would go ahead and put 6/5 here. Now note, if you elect that this is absolutely an election, you do not have to use this alternative period under any circumstances, but if you elect to use it, then you have to use this as your covered period throughout the remainder of your application. Very important. So the next is a checkbox. If you happen to receive more than $2 million of your PPP loan, you would check this box. Now we get into how the forgiveness itself is calculated. The first item that they ask for here is payroll costs, and look at this. We have to go somewhere else in the application now, because they said enter the amount from PPP Schedule A, line 10. So here we are in PPP Schedule A, and we have to go through and fill this out. So the first thing they ask for is cash compensation, or box 1, from Schedule A worksheet. So now we have to go to another place. So this application is a little bit bouncy, but let's go ahead and find the Schedule A worksheet, which is further down in the app. Here we are in PPP Schedule A worksheet. If you're following along with me, this is on page 9 of the PDF app. So how does this work? Table 1 says list employees who were employed by the borrower at any point during the cover period, and remember, or the alternative covered period if you chose to use an alternative, whose principal place of residence is in the United States and received compensation from the borrower at an annualized rate of less than or equal to $100,000. This is annualized rate. So it doesn't matter if you only paid them $20K during the 8 weeks. If you take 8 weeks and annualize that, which we can do here. If you paid them $20K in total in the year, there's 52 weeks. So you multiply 20,000 by 52 and then divide by 8, which is the covered period. Well, that would come out to 130K. So let's take a look again at what the bullet point says. Received compensation from the borrower at an annualized rate of less than or equal to 100K for all pay periods in 2019, or were not employed by the borrower at any point during 2019. So the key here is, if they were employed in 2019 and they made up more than 100K, don't include them here. Or if they were never employed in 2019, then regardless of their pay, you would still include them here. Okay, so they want you to list employees by name. So you're going to list one by one the employees that met the above criteria. And quick note, this is only employees. You're listing W-2 employees. So who does that exclude? No independent contractors. We're not including them here. No self-employed or owner employees. And no partners in partnerships. So no partners. Next, for each employee, for each W-2 employee, you're going to include the employee identifier. John, what is the employee identifier? I'm glad you asked. The employee identifier is the last 4 digits of that employee's social, last 4 of SSN. So cash compensation, what exactly is that? So cash compensation consists of a few different items. This includes your gross, or the gross paid to W-2 employees of wages, tips, commissions, paid leave, and paid leave includes things like vacation time, family, medical or sick leave, not including leave covered by the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So special leave that was awarded as a part of one of the coronavirus bills would not be included here. So this is specifically leave that you covered as the employer, not the federal government, but that you covered, again, for vacation, family, medical, and sick leave. That's it. And allowances for dismissal or separation paid or incurred during the covered period. So allowances for dismissal or separation. So if you paid your employees, hey, we know we can't operate right now. We're going to give you $5K a month to help out in this time, that would be an allowance for separation, and that would also be covered here. So you would add up all these amounts for each employee and list that amount as the cash compensation next to that employee. Next, we have the average FTE, or full-time equivalency. This is something very key, and I want you to pay close attention for the PPP application. They're not just looking at how many employees did you have. So if you had 5 before and 5 after, that's not good enough for them to go ahead and say that you used the PPP funds on your employees. What happens if you had 5 40-hour-a-week employees before COVID-19, then during the covered period, you're only paying them 20 hours a week for 20 hours a week. So what the SBA is going to look at and see is, well, you had 5 at 40, and now you have 5 at 20. So that's kind of like you only have 2.5, right? Because you only have 5 half employees, or 5 or 2.5 FTEs, full-time equivalencies. So to calculate the FTE for each employee, you're going to take the average hours that you paid the employee during the covered period, average hours per week. So it's 8 weeks, and let's say they worked for, if they were working for the full 40 hours, then that would be 240 hours of paid time to employees. But whatever that average comes out to, however many hours that the employees worked divided by 8, that would be the average hours per week of that employee. And you're going to divide that amount by 40. They're considering 40 hours to be the full-time equivalent for the purposes of PPP forgiveness. So that would get you your average FTE per employee. And the highest amount that could be for any employee is 1. By the way, if it will sometimes come out to a fraction like 0.87. If it came out to 0.87, or if it comes out to a multiple decimal like that, they say go ahead and round that up to the nearest tenth, which is the first decimal after, which is the first number after the decimal is tenths. So in this case, if you round this up, because it's a 7 coming after that 8, you would just put 0.9. So there's 0.9 full-time equivalents. The last item here is the salary/hourly wage reduction. Now, the salary/hourly wage reduction is not going to be required to be completed. You might leave that blank for all of your employees. The only time you're going to have to fill out this box here is if you reduced any of your employees. So considering that the employer you're looking at, let's say the first line here is Tim Smith. For Tim Smith, if you compare the period January 1 to March 31 of 2020, and you compare that to the covered period, if you reduced the employee's pay by more than 25%, comparing the two periods, again, that was 1/1 to 3/31, 2020, compared to or versus your covered period, was there more than a 25% reduction in that employee's pay? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And if there is, then you're not going to get full forgiveness for pay related to that employee because you went ahead and reduced their pay by that amount. So they have a calculator in the application to determine this for each of your employees. So let's go ahead and look at that. And here that is a bit higher in the app on page 7. So the first step is to determine if pay was reduced for more than 25%. We're right here on step 1. A, enter average annual salary or hourly wage during covered period or alternative covered period. So the average annual salary. So we'd have to go ahead and annualize. So let's say during the 8-week period, we went ahead and paid one of our employees $10K. So we paid that employee $10,000, and this is in 8 weeks. There are 52 weeks in a year. And we're going to go ahead and divide, so that turns out to $520,000. Divide that by 8, and that will let us know what would be the annualized salary of that employee. The $65,000. B, enter average annual salary or hourly wage between January 1 to March 31. So again, we'll look at what we paid that employee on average. Well, let's say on average per week in that period, and that's actually a 12-week period from January 1 to March 31. On average per week, we actually paid them $12,000. Multiplied again by 52, this time divided by 12, because again it's 12 weeks as opposed to 8 weeks of the covered period. And so we were actually paying them $52,000. So divide the value entered in 1A by 1B. And we get this number of 1.25. If 1.C is 0.75 or more, enter 0 in the column above box 3 for that employee. So what are they referring to there? Here's box 3. They're saying for that column, for that employee, you would enter 0. Because we actually paid more. We paid more for that employee for the covered period than we had for the period from January 1 to March 31. So we get full forgiveness for what we paid that employee. The key here is if you pay less, that's when it would become an issue. So coming back here, let's say instead of paying 65, you paid half of what you paid that you paid half of the 52 or 26. Now we have an issue, because if you divide A by B, or 26,000 divided by 52,000, now we have the answer of 0.5. So it said otherwise proceed to step 2. If this amount is not 0.75 or more, it's not, it's 0.5, so it's actually less. Step 2, determine if the salary hourly wage reduction safe harbor is met. Enter the annual salary or hourly